Dr. Beig, which side are you on?
His own.
No,
UPA or NDA?
No, there is no question of UPA or NDA. I am with UPA, we will continue to be with UPA, but wherever we feel, because let me be very honest.
It's okay. I meant that in jest.
No, so far as state of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, we have huge stakes so far as our relationship with Pakistan.
Okay, we have counters coming in.
May I?
Manish Tewari has a counter. Any counters from this side as well? Okay, Manish Tewari.
I just have a point of clarification. I was just trying to understand as to whether I'd heard what Dr. Beig said correctly. He said that regional parties should not have a veto on foreign policy issues. Yes. And if coming from the national conference, that is their position, I think that's a position which needs to be applauded.
I think I will answer that.
What's your question, sir?
I don't have a question. I just wanted a clarification to understand whether I had heard him correctly. And if he says that is his position, I think that's a position which needs to be applauded.
Well, but certainly as a representing a government which has consistently given into regional parties, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, in the sense, it's not a question of giving
question.
Arnab, I think you're being judgmental because of the simple reason that there is one thing called sensitivity and there's another thing called a concession. The UPA has been sensitive to regional aspirations within India. It has not conceded.
Now, Mr. Tewari, first interjection.
I did not want to interject Dr. Beig during the flow of his presentation. But let me just point out to him that foreign policy issues, especially those in relation to Pakistan and China, are not dealt with on religious basis. And should you believe that, I think you might want to look at these things once over again. And the second point I want to make is that, look, when it comes to foreign policy formulation, the central players, that is the parties in power at the center, the opposition, and the regional parties have to try to look at issues not in terms of their own narrow regional parochial interests, but in terms of the larger national good. That's what national interest is about. And I'm sure that Dr. Beig is on board on that plane.
You want to correct, right? He is saying to you, basically, don't give a communal spin to foreign policy. Do you want to retract what you just said, Mr. Beig?
No, what I said was, I was very clear. What I said was, as Mr. Manish Tewari said, we have issues with Pakistan. And Jammu and Kashmir has huge stakes in our relationship with Pakistan. That's what I'm saying. Because once our relationship with Pakistan deteriorates, it has directly adverse effect on the state of Jammu and Kashmir and on our well-being. That's what I said. I didn't say. What I meant was. So when Mr. Manish Tewari said, we were.
No, you are not answering his question.
My question is very basic. You have to deal with the Western neighbor. This is a given to you geographically. Yep. We all have to learn to look at the issue in terms of an overall national interest. And therefore, regional parties have to realize that the national interest subsumes a narrow regional interest.
Okay. That's exactly what I am saying.
Well, then we agree.
That's exactly what I am saying.
I'll move on. I'll only say this to you, sir, that you prefer dialogue with... You prefer dialogue with Pakistan. So which side are you on, sir?
He is on the side, normally of Dawood Ibrahim. But
it's amazing. Sir, you say you prefer dialogue with Pakistan despite Sarabjit being brutally killed in a Pakistani prison. You say dialogue with Pakistan despite the shoddy pace of the 26/11 trial? You say dialogue with Pakistan despite the anti-India resolution passed by the Pakistan Parliament in August 2013? Despite the beheading of our soldiers in January 2013? Despite 196 ceasefire violations in 2013 allowed and 93 in 2012? You want talks with Pakistan, sir? I mean, beyond the point of time, the question will be put to you, sir. Are you looking at national interest? But I'll come to that later. Our next speaker.
Asked me,
I have asked you something.
You asked me questions, so I have every right to answer those questions. You raised some very important issues. No, you raised some important issues. No, I agree. There is no question about that. There are no two opinions on that. But what I say, we had 3 full-fledged wars with Pakistan and many wars. Yeah. But even then, we have to talk. There is no substitute to talks. There is no substitute to uninterrupted, uninterruptible talks. Even after war, we have to sit on table and we have to sort it out.
Right. Our next speaker today is Pavan Varma of the JDU. Pavan Varma, your 2 minutes start now.
Basically, the 3 points I want to raise with the UPA. The first is, I think the UPA has not succeeded in forging a carefully thought out, calibrated foreign policy and security doctrine. And therefore, our reactions are either reactive or ad hoc. Let me explain this by this what I mean. There are two countries on our neighborhood, China and Pakistan. China has followed a policy of containment with engagement, and successfully so. China proposes, India responds. In the case of Pakistan, it's a policy of explosive aggression or tactical appeasement. We respond in an ad hoc manner without an overall holistic framework with anticipation, clarity and planning to subserve long-term policy goals. The question was raised about Chinese stapled visas for people from Arunachal. Our response should have been that we will ask for stapled visas for all Chinese of Tibetan origin. We could have said it. The question was, China protested about India exploring oil in the South China Sea. We should have raised what China is doing in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is disputed territory. The South China Sea is not. We don't come out with responses. In the case of Pakistan, sir, there are cases, first of all, 26/11. The attack on Mumbai. We said we will not have substantive engagement with Pakistan until the perpetrators, whose culpability was beyond doubt, will be brought to book. Subsequently, we rescinded from that stand. In the case of Pakistan, at Sharm el-Sheikh, we conceded that India is culpable in the insurgency in Balochistan just to appease Pakistan. In the 2006 Havana summit, we said Pakistan is also a victim of terrorism when Pakistan is the chief sponsor of terrorism against India. So I want to say that that is the first point. The second is that there is a fragmentation of foreign policy making where ground is ceded away from the center because of proper coordination with your allies. It's not as if regional parties don't have a point of view, but there is a political platform on which to meet and engage them in advance and understand what their point of view is. Therefore, we lost the opportunity when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh went to Bangladesh, and we lost, I think, face in terms of the international community when we supported the resolution in the UNHCR against Sri Lanka. We need to be able to have a proper political dialogue. And the last point, 10 seconds only, I think there's also been an institutional devaluation of the Foreign Office itself under the UPA. For 4 years, Manish, and I want you all to understand this also, we had a very good man as Foreign Minister, but who was neither fond of the subject nor inclined to learn it. And he reads a Portuguese text abroad without knowing it's not Indian. I think there was a leadership drift, and the Foreign Office has suffered because of it.
May I quickly interject to what Mr. Pavan Varma had said? Essentially, you've raised 2 points. One with regard to China and the other with regard to Pakistan.
So the lack of a security.
Well, in the sense, therefore, I'll connect the two and try and see as to how do I put the construct of a security doctrine onto it. The first thing that we must realize, and I say this with utmost responsibility, is that we seem to have, unfortunately, both a China phobia and at times a China obsession. The reason I say that is that if you look at China dehorse India, China is a lonely power. China has only 2 friends on its periphery. One is DPR Korea, who's not friendly with anybody in the world, and the other is Pakistan. And in the case of Pakistan, they are prepared to fight to the last Pakistani, but they are not prepared to support Pakistan beyond a point. So therefore, with regard to China, yes, there are difficulties on the border, but you need to engage. And you need to simultaneously put your point of view across effectively, which I think the UPA has succeeded in doing. We are collaborating with China in South Sudan. We are collaborating with China on Angola on oil exploration. But on borders, we have not conceded. The short point I'm trying to make is that you see, in foreign policy, and you understand that, Mr. Varma, more than I do, you have to engage at the same time, hold firm, even with Pakistan. Now, you see, you're right. On 2008, there may not have been progress. There may not have been progress to our anticipation. But may I say with utmost responsibility that we've succeeded in ensuring that there's never a repeat of Mumbai.
Mr. Minister,
6 years after Mumbai, there's never been a repeat of that kind of a terrorist attack.
Mr. Minister, come to your question.
Not because of your engagement. Not because of it.
It is because of a robust security doctrine.
Mr. Tewari,
we're allowing a rebut.
May I come back? Who says there is anything wrong with engagement? 2000 years ago, Chanakya, who wrote the first political treatise on foreign policy and statecraft, said, Samadama Danda Bhed. Reconciliation, inducement, deterrent action and subversion. Use all your instruments, but part of a holistic, calibrated doctrine and security approach to foreign policy. Which is not in an ad hoc manner.
Which is precisely what has been done in the last 10 years. Which is precisely, Mr. Verma, what has been done. Because you have a situation whereby you have not conceded an inch to China insofar as your border is concerned.
18 kilometers.
Why come in on that? Fact check from my side. Mr. Minister, you say not conceded an inch. There were at least 5 major intrusions by China into Indian territory in 2013, sometimes as deep as 19.2 kilometers. And your foreign minister said this is like acne, which can be acne on beautiful skin, which can be addressed by applying an ointment.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of foreign policy that is. You want to reconsider what you said,
Since
Mr.
you
Minister.
raised it, allow me to respond. You see, there is a perception line that we have insofar as the Chinese border is concerned, and there's a perception line which the Chinese have. At times they do come up to their perception line, but always to be pushed back.
So
when the last incident in Deccan took place, they were actually pushed back to
I think
therefore, that's why I'm saying that we need to be dispassionate in our dealings with both Pakistan and China and not allow rhetoric to dominate the
one minute. Let me pay a compliment. One good thing about several ministers in this government is that they have a great English vocabulary.
Well, not as good as
that includes our present foreign minister as well as our honourable minister for information and broadcasting. The present foreign minister says
they have fluency without grammar and without substance.
He says something.
Well, that's something I think we ended up imbibing from the honourable members of the Indian Foreign Service.
Yes, absolutely.
Who till yesterday were representing our government and now have done a U-turn completely, a month after retirement.
You're representing the Republic, the Constitution, not a political party.
Therefore, that's the credibility of our honourable members of the Indian